Have you ever wondered what a brand new septic system looks like that's installed in 2024? Well, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at a property that has a new tank, new distribution box, but supposedly has the existing original absorption system. So we're about to drive our way over there, and I'm going to show you what we find, and hopefully this is going to be a good example of what a new system looks like, but it could also be a bad one. Who knows? It's only a month old, so let's go take a look and see what's going on. All right, so we just pulled in, and it turns out this is actually a flipped house, so this is gonna be fun. So flipped homes are always interesting because you never really know what you're gonna get, and a lot of times they cut a lot of corners. So when we go in and we start popping things open, hopefully we find a good system, but you never know when it comes to flipped homes. So I'm gonna go out back, take a look at what we're working with, show you, and then we're gonna open everything, and hopefully we don't have any problems. So as we can see here, we have our new septic tank with manhole risers front and back. See a little bit of cavitation and settling around the tank. Super common. This lid's gonna be the front, this lid's gonna be the back, and then we have our access to the distribution box. Now, the permit said manhole riser. It looks a little bit smaller than one, but we'll pop it open, see what's going on inside of there. And then from the box, we should have our drywell. This is gonna be the absorption system for the septic. So we got all the lids off, right? Basically exactly what we would expect to see inside of a modern septic system. So let's go ahead, turn the camera around and see what's going on. So we can see here that we have our front chamber, right? So all of our modern systems are gonna be tube walls. You're gonna have one here in the middle, first chamber, second chamber. That's going to be our front baffle. Now, the issue I have with this style of baffle is, do you see how tight it is to the inlet line? The concern I have with that is that you run the risk of stuff getting stuck and causing clogs. Ideally, the front baffle's there to slow all of the wastewater down so you can get a nice separation of solids from the liquids. But the problem comes when it comes to those really tight gaps. If you flush like a tampon, a condom, cigarette butt, something like that, potentially can get stuck in that pipe between the baffle and the pipe itself. Dealing with clogs is no joke. Like, you definitely don't want to have that happen. So the best thing you can do whenever you have a system like this is be very mindful of what you're actually putting down the toilet or sink, right? So like if you're putting a bunch of flushable wipes, feminine products, the odds of you having a clog are much higher. So that's the front of the tank. The primary purpose of a two-chamber system is to have the front chamber clarify a majority of the solids. That wall baffle, which probably has the same kind of plastic baffle in the middle, which we're going to check in a minute with the mirror and flashlight, that first chamber captures a majority of stuff. Now, some of that stuff, no matter how well you take care of the system, is going to work its way out. The design of a two-chamber tank is that little bit that makes it out that you normally would see on a single-chamber tank. Now that little bit gets stuck in the second chamber. Because that little bit gets stuck, now you have even less debris going into the absorption system. This is going to help to prolong the life of the system. So let's look in the back chamber, kind of discuss a little bit about what's going on over there. So this will be our outlet side. So you also have another one of those baffles right over here. This one's a little bit less problematic because the only thing that should be traveling through this side of the tank should be liquids. But you will see that there's a little bit of floating debris on top. We call that scum. So the goal of this baffle is to prevent that floating stuff from getting into the pipe and causing problems in the distribution box. So if we look right over top, you'll see more stuff on the surface and nothing in the middle. The outlet baffle is one of the most important parts of your septic tank. The purpose of it, again, is to prevent that scum from getting out of the tank, but if you don't have it, you just run the risk of clogs and further accelerating the decay of your septic system. What causes a drain field to fail is a combination of liquid and what's called biomat. It's biologic material. It's a bunch of junk, poo, toilet paper, stuff like that works its way out of the tank, plugs up the soil or the stone in the trench or drywell, and it makes it to where it can no longer dissipate that liquid. Very problematic, definitely not what you want to see. So our order of operations is going to be, you flush a toilet, the water goes to the front of the tank, which then separates out the solids in the first chamber to the second part of the tank, and then it goes to a thing called a distribution box. So let's go ahead and pop our head in there and see what's going on inside the box. So what we're looking at here is going to be our distribution box. Basically, in short, it's just a little concrete box that you can see right here, where you got your pipes coming in. You're going to have these little plugs where you could put new pipes into it, and then this will be our pipe going out. So this is our inlet line, which is going to be coming from the septic tank. This is going to be our outlet line, which goes to the dry well. The purpose of a distribution box typically is to separate multiple absorption system components. In a standard configuration, usually you'll see at least 2 exit lines. And in this particular one, I'm not entirely sure why they have a distribution box since it's only going to 1 pipe beyond the permit required it. So very well could have been that the county said, no, we want a distribution box and we want it to look like this, so you have to put it in. And whether it makes sense or not, guess what? You're putting it in. Most distribution boxes nowadays are going to have some kind of access at the surface so that we can maintain the system and diagnose problems much more efficiently. The benefit of having an access point at the surface is so that way, let's just say that you have even distribution or the box settles over time and one side's getting more than the other side, you can insert what's called a speed leveler to adjust the flow rate to basically prolong the life of the system and make it to where everything evenly disperses. Once the water gets through the tank into the distribution box, you got to get rid of it somehow, and that's where the dry well comes into play. So let's go take a look at that. So what we're looking at here is our dry well. Now, this one looks like an old cesspool that was converted into a dry well. Very common practice back in the day, but essentially what a dry well is going to be a bunch of cinder blocks stacked up in a circle with a concrete lid on the top. So we can see that this one's pretty accessible at grade. If this is stuff that bothers people, usually we just say put some more topsoil. That little white pipe right here, this is going to be how you can look inside to basically see what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and toss the phone in there so you can see what's going on as well. So I know it was a little bit difficult to see inside of there, but there's not much we can really do with that just because of the way that these things are built. It's kind of difficult to get a good flashlight in so you can actually see what it is. But you may have seen that it's cinder block all the way around. And basically what'll happen is you run water into the tank will then discharge that water into the pit, and then the pit will allow the wastewater to work its way into the surrounding soil. Now, over time, these things will start to fill up, and that's why you want to run some water through it when you're testing it to make sure that everything's draining the way that it's supposed to drain. The county's not the biggest fan of these pits anymore because a lot of times they have a lot of structural concerns. Namely, it's a large open void in the ground. So if you drive something heavy over top of it, you do run the risk of collapsing the lid and potentially falling in. Now, this particular one's not incredibly deep. It's about 6 foot, but you know, that's a heck of a way to get stuck for an afternoon. We recently, about 3 weeks ago, had somebody fall into a hand-dug well in southwest Baltimore. So it can happen. It does happen. And unfortunately, some people don't make it out. The other guy, who fell in the well, he was fine. He got out, but he was stuck in there for overnight, which kind of sucks, right? Dry wells work just like drain fields. But we use drain fields nowadays because they're a little bit easier to install and they're a little bit more reliable as far as like compression goes. You'll still see dry wells every now and again in some of our southern counties, or if you have like a house that's got like a really, really tight lot or some kind of weird constraint where you can't really build a straight line, so you go up and down in order to deal with the water. Now, the expected lifespan for a system like this is usually 30 or 40 years. Obviously, this dry well is much older than the tank, but it's working. And the county's not going to force you to replace something that's not working unless it creates a health hazard for somebody else in the area. This particular system has been looked at several times over the last 12 months, so we know that it's working and doing what it's supposed to do. We're here as a post-installation to verify as a third party that everything was installed correctly and is working the way that it ought to. I think that these newer systems are always fun because they basically all look the same, but they come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and you know, it's always something interesting to look at. So whenever you have a new system coming, there's no real getting away from having these access points at the surface. Each of those lids serves a purpose and they're useful. I get it. Sometimes it's an eyesore, but you got to realize that everybody has them, so it really doesn't matter, right? Where most people run into problems for these systems is attempting to try and hide the system, right? The more shrubbery you put, mulch, grass, asphalt, whatever. That's usually where people start running into problems, is they make it harder to find. And then, let's just say that you cover both of those lids for the 2-chamber tank. Well, if the pumper's not looking or not doing his due diligence, he may not know that there's a second chamber, and he might only be pumping one, which defeats the purpose of the system. In our state, you can't really get away from it. You're getting a 2-chamber system regardless of how big your house is, right? They kind of wrote that into the law. Baltimore County will require these access points on the distribution boxes for literally every system. Most of the counties are starting to adopt that as well because it does help with diagnostic purposes, but it's not as required. I think it's fun to look at these. If you enjoy videos like this, if you found this informative in any way, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I have more videos posted every day in the world of well and septic, and I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow.